Have you ever felt completely wiped out? Not because you did too much, but because you thought too much. If that sounds familiar, well, you're definitely not alone. Today we're going to dive deep into the psychology of what's really happening when your brain just refuses to switch off.
Man, this quote just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? It's this wild paradox. The very thing that makes you so insightful and empathetic can also be the thing that leaves you feeling totally and utterly drained. So, let's get into why that is.
All right, let's start by unpacking this central idea, the overthinker's paradox. How can a mind that's so good at analysis and problem solving somehow turn into its own worst enemy?
This is what it feels like, right? It's the constant internal monologue. You're replaying that awkward conversation from hours ago, you're drafting emails in your head that you'll probably never send, and you're lying in bed at night mapping out a dozen different what-if scenarios. It's not just thinking. It is a full-time job, and it's exhausting.
So what's actually happening up there on a neurological level? Why does it feel like the off switch is just gone? Let's take a look at the actual science behind it. So, psychologists have a term for this, maladaptive rumination. It basically means getting stuck in a thought loop. But here's the thing, research shows this isn't some kind of weakness. It often means your brain is actually incredibly good at what it does. It just hasn't gotten the memo that it's okay to stop.
Okay, so this whole process is driven by two main players in your brain. First, you've got a super active prefrontal cortex. Think of it as your brain's CEO. It just stays online, planning and analyzing, even when you're trying to relax. At the very same time, your default mode network is just constantly churning out that inner monologue. The result? A brain that is, for all intents and purposes, always on.
Now this next part is, I think, the most important bit because it completely reframes this whole experience. What if overthinking isn't a flaw? What if it's something else entirely?
For a lot of people, this whole habit started out as a totally brilliant survival strategy. Seriously, if you grew up in an environment that was unpredictable, where you had to be on your toes, well, your young brain learned a very logical way to cope. Think ahead. Anticipate everything. The logic was, if you can predict what's coming, maybe you can keep yourself safe.
So this is the big aha moment. Your highly active mind was just doing what it was trained to do to protect you. It's an incredibly smart nervous system that learned to stay on high alert. You see, it's not a bug. It's a feature that was developed for a completely different operating system.
But here's where it gets a little more nuanced, because not all deep thinking is the same. It is absolutely crucial to know the difference between the kind of thinking that helps us grow and the kind that just keeps us stuck. Let's break that down.
So on one side, you have reflective rumination. This is when you turn inward to genuinely understand yourself, to process your feelings. This is a real strength, and it's linked to high emotional intelligence. But then on the other side, you have brooding rumination. This is just passively stewing on problems without actually moving toward a solution. This is the one that leads to that feeling of being paralyzed with anxiety. And the tricky part is how easily you can slide from one into the other without even noticing.
And this is why it is so incredibly hard to just stop. Your brain feels like it's being productive. It feels like you're making real progress on a problem, but in reality, you're just spinning your wheels. Cognitive psychologists call this the illusion of mental progress. You're doing the activity of thinking, but you're not actually getting any closer to a real answer. So if it's so draining, why does the brain keep doing it? Well, it turns out there's a hidden reward system going on, and it comes with a pretty surprising side effect.
So here's the chemical breakdown. When your brain is running through all those scenarios and analyzing every possible angle, it's actually releasing these little hits of dopamine, which is a reward chemical. But it's rewarding the activity of thinking, not for actually solving the problem. And that's why advice like, just stop thinking about it, is basically impossible. There's a chemical reason to keep going.
And here is the really wild part, the upside. Studies have actually found that people who tend to ruminate also score way higher on what's called cognitive empathy. That's the ability to accurately understand what other people might be thinking or feeling. All that constant analysis actually makes you more tuned into social cues and the emotional temperature of a room.
And this, right here, is the core tension that overthinkers live with every single day. The same mental engine that makes you so incredibly perceptive is also the thing that makes you so tired. You notice everything, but the more you analyze it, sometimes the further away clarity can feel.
Okay, so what can you do? The goal isn't to stop the thoughts, because let's be real, you can't. The real goal is to change your relationship with them. Let's look at a really practical way to start doing that.
There's a really powerful technique from a type of therapy called acceptance and commitment therapy, and it's called cognitive diffusion. It's basically the practice of learning to observe your thoughts as just, well, thoughts, like clouds passing in the sky. You can notice the loop is happening without having to jump inside and get carried away by it.
Here's exactly what that shift feels like. A fused thought is, this situation is dangerous. You and the thought are one and the same. A diffused thought is, my brain is generating a concern right now. Do you feel the difference? That tiny bit of space you create between you and the thought, that's where your power is. It pulls you out of the storm and lets you just watch the weather of your own mind.
And really, that's the whole journey, isn't it? It's not about fighting your mind or trying to shut it up. It's about gently and with a whole lot of patience, teaching that super active, very protective part of you that it's finally safe. It doesn't have to stay on high alert anymore. It's okay to rest.
Honestly, just understanding these patterns is the biggest and most powerful first step. If this explainer helped you make a little more sense of your own mind, please do us a favor and hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into how we all work. Thanks so much for being here.